The night was a restless beast, painted in neon glow and the low, guttural rumble of engines. Inside the dimly lit clubhouse of the Bandidos motorcycle club, the air hung thick with stale cigar smoke and the scent of motor oil. These men, big, bearded and hardened by life on the fringes, were accustomed to trouble, to being the trouble. But tonight, trouble found them in a way they never expected. Chico, the chapter secretary, was hunched over a laptop, running some routine, slightly less than legal checks on a new bike title. The TV in the corner muttered static, and the pool table felt heavy with unspoken tension. Then, a sharp, insistent ring cut through the quiet. It was Chico's burner phone, reserved for things that needed to stay absolutely off the grid. He frowned, picking it up. "Yeah, who is this?" The voice on the other end was a frantic, thin whisper, barely audible over what sounded like muffled shouting. "Please, please help me," a woman's voice choked out, laced with pure terror. He's got the kids locked in the basement. He's going to hurt them. He's crazy. I can't." And then silence. A sickening, abrupt snap as the call disconnected. Chico stared at the phone. For a second, his mind registered it as a prank, a wrong number, maybe even a setup. But the raw, unfiltered fear in that woman's voice was unmistakable. It snagged on something deep inside him, a long-buried reflex that had nothing to do with patched cuts and club loyalty, and everything to do with a primal human response to desperation. He slammed the phone down on the table, the small sound echoing in the large room. "Quiet," he barked, his voice carrying the weight of immediate danger. The few men scattered around, Grizz, the towering sergeant-at-arms, and two prospects, looked up instantly, sensing the shift in mood from bored caution to red alert urgency. "Someone just called," Chico explained, his eyes narrowed. "Woman. Sounded like she was being murdered. Said someone locked her kids in the basement." Then the call dropped after "please help." Grizz lumbered over, his face etched with concern. Grizz didn't have much time for pity, but he had zero tolerance for anyone who harmed children. His own younger sister had been in a bad situation years ago, and the memory fueled an unwavering, almost righteous anger when kids were involved. "Did you catch a number, Chico?" "Burner phone, Grizz. It only shows unknown, or sometimes a ghost city prefix. But I can trace the tower ping. Maybe the last few seconds of GPS data if she had location services on. It'll take minutes, and I'm talking dark web deep dive tracing. It's not clean." "Then make it dirty," Grizz ordered, his voice low and dangerous. "A call like that doesn't just happen. We don't wait for the police. That's 15 minutes of paperwork and bureaucracy. This woman sounded like she had 15 seconds. You start tracing. The rest of you, gear up, get the vests, get the heavy tools, and get the fast bikes. We roll as soon as Chico gets a pin on that signal. If those kids are in danger, we're the only chance they have." The clubhouse transformed. The slow, lazy atmosphere vanished, replaced by the focused, almost military precision these men used when planning a run or a confrontation. They weren't trained soldiers, but they were organized, decisive, and ruthless when protecting what they deemed sacred. Tonight, it was the voice on the other end of a dropped call. Chico's fingers flew across the keyboard, a flurry of rapid keystrokes executing complex scripts. The process of tracing a burner phone signal to a specific GPS coordinate using cell tower triangulation and micro-timing analysis is grueling, even for a seasoned tech expert. He was pushing the limits of legality and the network firewall. His brow was beaded with sweat, the pressure of a ticking clock, of children potentially in harm's way, weighing down on him. Minutes felt like hours. The other men stood silently, engines already idling outside the roll-up door, the low thrumming vibrations a constant reminder of their impatience. They were ready to ride into the kind of violence that would make headlines, not for their usual turf war, but for a selfless act of intervention. Finally, a set of coordinates flashed on Chico's screen. A green pin dropped onto a satellite map. It was a small, isolated house on the outskirts of the city, not far from the dilapidated industrial zone. "Got it," Chico grunted, spinning the screen around. "Isolated residential. Address is 4828 West Elm Street. Looks like a single-family home. Plenty of shadows, plenty of cover. No immediate neighbors." Grizz looked at the map. His lips barely moved. No police involvement. No witnesses. Just us and them. Let's ride. We're not the law, but tonight, we're the justice. He pulled on his leather cut, the large patch on his back a symbol of fear to many, but tonight, it felt like a badge of protective honor. He didn't care about the consequences. He only cared about the whisper, "Please help me." Grizz mounted his massive Harley, the engine roaring to life, drowning out the last remnants of the clubhouse's silence. He looked at Chico. "You stay here. Keep the channel open. Be ready for anything. If we don't check in 30 minutes, call the chapter president. Tell him we went in on a rescue." Chico nodded, already back at the screen, running background checks on the address owner. Grizz led the small convoy out, the cluster of powerful bikes tearing through the night streets. They were a menacing sight, a wave of noise and shadow. But for once their destination was not a rival gang's territory or a seedy bar. It was a desperate plea for help, a promise of protection for the innocent. They were the darkness riding toward the light. The ride to West Elm Street was a blur of speed and focused aggression. The Bandidos moved like a well-oiled machine, navigating the back roads with precision honed by years of illicit maneuvers. There was no casual banter, only the deep, unifying roar of their V-twin engines echoing the pounding urgency in their chests. Grizz was running point, his eyes constantly scanning the environment, searching for signs of an ambush or, worse, signs that they were already too late. As they approached 4828 West Elm, they cut the engines half a block away. The sudden silence was heavy, punctuated only by the clicking of cooling metal and their own heavy breathing. They dismounted silently, moving with a surprising, almost cat-like stealth for men their size. The house was exactly as Chico had described, isolated, dark, and utterly unremarkable. A single dim light burned in an upstairs window, a ghostly beacon in the darkness. Grizz pulled Prospect Jacks aside. "You circle around the back. Check for a secondary exit, basement windows, anything. Don't engage, just report. The rest of us take the front door. We go fast and loud. We need to create chaos, draw his attention away from the kids." Jacks, a young man trying to earn his patch, nodded, his eyes wide but determined. This wasn't the kind of action he'd imagined, but the stakes were clear. He vanished into the shadows that hugged the house's perimeter. Grizz, followed by two veteran members, Skull and Reaper, advanced toward the porch. They weren't carrying firearms. The risk of an accidental shooting involving the children was too high. Their tools were blunt and effective, heavy-duty flashlights, a crowbar for forced entry, and the sheer intimidating presence of three massive men in leather cuts. Reaching the front door, Grizz gave the universal signal for breach. The kick was brutal, a focused explosion of force aimed at the lock assembly. The door shuddered violently, the frame splintering with a sickening crack before it flew inward, slamming against the interior wall. "Bandidos!" Grizz roared, the name echoing in the sudden, terrifying silence of the house. "We know the kids are here. We are coming for them!" They moved quickly into the living room, their heavy boots thudding on the hardwood floor. The air inside was warm, stale, and smelled faintly of cheap booze and fear. They swept the main floor quickly. The living room was a mess, an overturned lamp, a broken vase, and signs of a struggle. On the kitchen counter, a cheap cell phone lay shattered. It was the woman's phone. The call was real, Skull grunted, running his hand over the splintered doorframe. He panicked and smashed her phone. Suddenly, a sound from upstairs, a guttural, enraged shout, followed by heavy footsteps stomping down the hallway. The man knew they were there. He was coming down. "Reaper, cover the stairwell. Skull, check the main floor closets. Find the basement access," Grizz commanded. Reaper took up a defensive position, ready to meet the assailant. A man staggered into view at the top of the stairs. He was mid-40s, shirtless, covered in sweat, his eyes wild with a mixture of terror and blind fury. He was holding something, a baseball bat, swung haphazardly but with vicious intent. "Get out of my house, get out!" the man shrieked, descending the stairs too fast. Reaper didn't wait. He was fast, despite his size. As the man reached the bottom step, Reaper used the heavy flashlight like a baton, not aiming for a kill, but for a solid, disabling blow to the man's forearm. The crack was sharp and sickening, and the bat clattered uselessly to the floor. The man screamed, clutching his broken arm, stumbling backward against the wall. Grizz was on him immediately, pinning him against the wall, his massive forearm across the man's throat. "Where are the children?" "Tell me now!" he demanded, his voice a low, gravelly snarl that promised extreme pain if the man refused. "They're mine! You can't take them! I was just teaching them a lesson!" The man whimpered, the rage instantly dissolving into pathetic fear under Grizz's dominant grip. Meanwhile, Skull located the basement door disguised within a utility pantry near the kitchen. He yanked it open. The smell of damp concrete and fear wafted up the dark stairwell. "Basement is clear." "Going down," Skull reported, drawing a tactical blade, not for the kids, but for the locks, the ropes, or whatever restraint might be down there. Downstairs, the frantic scratching and soft cries of children stopped abruptly as Skull's silhouette appeared in the doorway. Two small figures, a girl and a boy, huddled together in a corner, their faces streaked with tears and dirt. They were shaking violently. They looked up at the intimidating figure of Skull, leather, patches, and a shaved head, and their fear intensified. Skull knelt down slowly, setting his blade aside and pulling off his gloves. He spoke in a voice so soft it was barely recognizable. Hey, it's okay. We're the good guys. We're here to take you out of here. You're safe now." The girl, who looked about 7, pointed a tiny trembling finger at the club patch on his chest, her voice a barely audible squeak. "Are you a pirate?" Skull smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed his scarred face. "Something like that, kid. But tonight, we're just your ride home. Can you walk? We gotta go." Upstairs, the situation was locked down. Grizz maintained his iron grip on the restrained man, ensuring he couldn't move or shout. Reaper stood guard, his eyes constantly tracking the house, the quiet tension having replaced the initial violence. The low-frequency crackle of the radio on Grizz's shoulder connected him back to Chico at the clubhouse. "Chico, we got the situation contained. Suspect is restrained. Children found, unharmed but scared. We're evacuating now. Get the truck ready for disposal of the loose ends here." Grizz spoke in coded language, not detailing the illegal restraint and containment of the father, ensuring only the necessary information travelled over the airwaves. Just then, Jax burst in through the back door, having completed his sweep. He stopped dead, seeing the scene, Grizz holding the whimpering man, the shattered front door. "Clear back perimeter, Grizz. No cops, no neighbours saw anything. What's the status?" "Rescue completed," Grizz confirmed. "Get ready to secure this guy. He doesn't deserve a jail cell. He deserves to face the consequences we dish out." At that moment, Skull reappeared from the basement doorway, gently guiding the two children. They were small, clutching onto Skull's thick leather vest like lifelines. The moment the mother, who had been hiding in the laundry room after making the desperate call and being subdued, saw her children, a raw, primal sob escaped her. She rushed forward, gathering them into a tight, shaking embrace. "Oh, my babies, thank God you're safe," she wept, pressing their faces into her shoulder. The children, seeing their mother, finally let the fear give way to exhaustion and relief. Grizz watched the reunion, a flicker of something close to emotion crossing his stoic face. He tightened his grip on the man for a brief, punishing moment before shoving him into the care of Reaper and Jax. "Tie him up and leave him secured in the master bedroom closet. We don't want him moving. We'll call the county line later from a payphone and leave an anonymous tip about a domestic disturbance, but we need to put some time and space between us and this mess." He walked over to the shaken family. The mother looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. She saw the intimidating size, the patches, the sheer danger radiating from him. But now she also saw the salvation. You came. You actually came. I just dialed a number randomly, a number I saw scribbled on a napkin from the bar months ago. I never thought. Thank you. How can I ever repay you?" she whispered, tears still flowing. Grizz knelt, bringing his massive frame down to her level, making sure his voice was gentle enough not to scare the kids. You don't repay us. You just keep those kids safe. We heard your call. That's all the reason we needed." He looked at the little girl, the one who called Skull a pirate. "We're not heroes, Ma'am. We're just the people who show up when no one else will. Sometimes the monsters wear suits, and sometimes the protectors wear leather." He pulled a small wad of crumpled cash, not a lot, but enough for a cheap motel and food for a few days, from his pocket, and pressed it into her hand. "You and the kids need to leave tonight. Go to a shelter, find family, don't look back, and never tell anyone who helped you. Just remember you had some guardian angels on 2 wheels tonight." With swift finality, the mission was over. The Bandidos didn't linger. They moved the woman and her children out the back door and loaded them into a nondescript sedan that one of the prospects had driven to the scene, ensuring they were quickly driven miles away to safety. Grizz took one last look at the house, a monument to a night of terror that they had shattered. Skull and Reaper were already back on their bikes, the engines idling low. They left no trace of their presence, save for the broken front door and the terrified man locked inside the closet, contemplating the grim fate that the outlaws had spared him from, opting for a psychological scare over outright violence to ensure he never bothered the family again. They roared away, blending back into the anonymity of the highway. They were the shadows that saved the innocent, the villains who played the heroes, riding back toward their clubhouse, knowing they had done a good deed that would never be acknowledged, never rewarded, and certainly never understood by the world that judged them. They didn't seek thanks or recognition. They did it because they could, because the call for please help demanded an answer. And tonight the answer rode on Harleys, patched and defiant, proving that sometimes the ones labeled the bad guys are the only ones brave enough to be truly good.